This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Manufacturing Leadership Council's critical issues call for March 2020. Our topic today is, can Manufacturing 4.0 create a circular industrial economy? I'm David Brosell, co-founder of the MLC. I'll be your host and moderator for today's call. Thank you all for joining again. I'm sure you are all very focused right now on dealing with the COVID-19 threat in your business and in your personal lives. At MLC and at our parent, the National Association of Manufacturers, we are determined to respond to member requests for information and best practices in dealing with the disease. The NAM has many resources on its website that you can access at nam.org. Last week, the MLC and the NAM hosted a call to discuss operational issues associated with COVID-19. More than 1,100 people attended this call, which featured two companies, Train Technologies, formerly Ingersoll Rand, and Premio Foods, describing what they are doing to deal with the threat. Both Train and Premio fielded many questions during this call. The call is available to you on the NAM site on the COVID-19 resource page. We are now in the process of pulling together additional informational calls. Stay tuned for more information on this score. Now, if all this weren't enough, the big news this morning, at least here in New England, is that Tom Brady is leaving the Patriots. The GOAT is gone. I know, long pause, deep breath. We will get through this one too. So we now need to focus our minds on something else, and that is our subject today. Before I reintroduce the four members of our panel, a few words about sustainability and the circular economy, but let me move these slides if I can. That's me in a brand new photo, so I actually really look that way. Our agenda today will be our usual critical issues call agenda. I'll introduce each member of the panel. We have an outstanding panel for you today, and then we will go into Q&A with you, our audience, and also hear your comments on what you may be doing about sustainability in the circular economy. And then I'll give you some additional information on upcoming MLC events and virtual calls. So our meeting format is standard, moderated by myself or a member of the content team. We like these calls to be as interactive as possible, so if you have questions during the presentations, don't hesitate to write them down or put them in the chat box on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and then we will get to them toward the end. I may call on specific members of the audience to join us in this discussion as we go forward, and afterwards we will post a recording of this webinar on the MLC website. That should be up in about 48 hours after the call. Importantly, we have in the field right now the MLC's latest critical issues survey. This is around the data imperative that we're all dealing with in our companies. If you haven't filled out this survey, please do so. It's very, very important to our research efforts and to building knowledge about this important subject. So please take the survey. So today, I'd like to just try to put this topic in context for us as we start our discussion. Manufacturing 4.0 sustainability is one of the MLC's member-approved critical issues facing manufacturing. The MLC defines this as new analytical insights derived from manufacturing 4.0 technologies help provide companies of all sizes with the opportunity to optimize the use of resources, achieve major efficiency gains, reduce time and materials in mass customization, minimize waste and environmental impacts, and add direct value to the business. Successful engagement with customers, suppliers, partners, and the next generation workforce also requires manufacturers to become increasingly transparent about their environmental and socially responsible practices. And a key area of focus for this critical issue here at the MLC is indeed the circular economy. We articulate this as holistic, sustainable manufacturing business models supported by collaborative cross-sector partnerships and deep community engagement that help create a circular manufacturing economy. As I'm sure most of you know, MLC published the results of its latest survey research on sustainability in the December issue of the Manufacturing Leadership Journal. A key finding of the survey analysis, which was done by my colleague Paul Tate, who I'll be quoting here now, is that advanced M4.0 production and analytical technologies are already helping companies identify and deliver the competitive benefits of more sustainable approaches. Looking ahead, 68% of survey respondents predicted that M4.0 will have either an extremely significant or fairly significant impact on their sustainability performance over the next 5 years. The technologies predicted to have biggest impact on the future of manufacturing sustainability are artificial intelligence and machine learning tools, with their significance rising from 29% cited by respondents today to almost tripling to 86% in 5 years. Over 2/3 of respondents also expect the sustainable impact of additive manufacturing approaches, new materials, augmented and virtual reality systems, and digital twins and digital thread technologies to all increase in importance over the next half decade. In fact, the close relationship between M4.0 technologies and a company's ability to improve its sustainability performance is becoming ever more intertwined. 46% of the respondents to the survey agreed with the statement that their company's M4.0 strategy already complements or is closely linked to its overall sustainability strategy. In terms of more sustainable approaches to product design and overall life cycles, there is clear evidence that many manufacturers are beginning to develop and deploy more extensive strategies that embed sustainability practices from cradle to grave. 2/3 of manufacturers now say they have formal design criteria built into their product development processes that look ahead to that product's end of life, whether it's the recycling of all or some of the materials, the reuse of some components, remanufacturing, refurbishment, or simply easier disassembly. Many of these have also followed up this design philosophy by implementing product return or end-of-life programs, including returning used products to a dedicated recycling partner or directly back to themselves. Perhaps most encouraging, though, is that these types of programs represent continuing moves by many manufacturers toward the creation of a more regenerative, circular industrial economy for the future, where traditional take, make, dispose approaches increasingly give way to refurbish, reuse, recycle production strategies. That regenerative industrial model is certainly what the vast majority of manufacturers expect to see in the years ahead. Over 3/4 of survey respondents consider the concept of a circular industrial economy as important to the future of manufacturing. So with that, please allow me to introduce our first panelist, Kevin Prouty of International Data Corp. Kevin?
Thank you, David. I very much appreciate the introduction. That was some great information. So I'm here to kind of just set the tone for what we see manufacturers doing. First of all, I want to make sure that we've defined the circular economy. I think in some ways there's some common sense around what it means. I think where you start to get into a little gray area is what are the parts of the circular, or how circular is someone's economy. But the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has been one of the biggest thought leaders around the circular economy, and at IDC, that's who we typically refer to when we're looking for definitions and more collaborative work around the circular economy. So I just think it's really important to set this as the foundation of the discussion I'm going to have. And now I also want to I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but I think it's really important to understand not every industry is different within manufacturing. The high-tech industry has been doing recycling of materials and components and full subsystems for quite a while, both based on regulatory, I shouldn't say both, but regulatory cost and cost recovery, that is, and also social responsibility. And it's true for pretty much any industry. And then you get into paper. We've been recycling and reusing paper, repurposing paper for a long time. Significant portion of different parts of the paper industry are from recycled products. But at the same time, there's still 22 million tons of paper still ends up in landfills. So there is still a long ways to go. Same with plastics. Plastic has been recycled for a long time, has not been a huge amount of progress outside some of the regulatory pushes that have gone on. There's still 25 million tons of paper ending up in landfills. So, even though, I actually worked in a machine shop, and at the time in the late 80s, it was probably the most circular economy around, because all of our scrap went out to a scrap dealer that was then sold to a reprocessing and would come back in on the other end, especially metals like aluminum and such. So, the circular economy has been building. It's only recently, though, that there has been a real push to move from just talking about sustainability to the circular economy. So what does circular economy mean to manufacturers? It's part of the greater sustainability push. That's usually where it's coming from inside an organization. You probably have either, if you're a public company, it's part of your sustainability rankings for your investors. For your local community, it's part of how do you become a better neighbor and taking care of the environment around you. And of course, the goal of the circular economy, the theoretical goal, is one-to-one consume to produce, and then back to consume. We'll probably never quite get to that point, but the push towards it, there's a significant amount of benefits. And where we typically see the push right now for manufacturers in the circular economy is driven by design, and it's a materials focus. There is a significant amount of activity on the technology side to develop systems that allow engineers and product developers to look out to the end of life using simulation, AI, machine learning, to really start to get an understanding of what the life cycle of the product looks like and start preparing for that, and then going back into your own supply chain around materials. And again, the three verticals I talked about, high-tech, paper, plastics, we see a lot of activity there. And again, as I mentioned, this isn't new. This is, we're calling it the circular economy, but again, you go back and look at things like lean manufacturing and continuous improvement, reducing waste. There were aspects that have laid the foundation for the circular economy at that point. Focus on circular economy. There's an analysis of detailed research on product use and end of life. I talked about this earlier, but there really has to be a significant amount of research and detailed analysis for insights into how your products, once they leave your organization, are delivered to the customer, how the customer uses them, and how the customer discards them and brings them back. And again, for many reasons, there's costs of use, cost of recovery, there's regulatory issues. I actually think regulatory issues will be the biggest driver in the short term around circular economy and the push towards it. But at the same time, social responsibility and cost recovery are still big factors. And of course, as I mentioned, it's all around the design for end of life. I mean, this is where it all starts. If you're not designing for the end of life of products, it is going to cost you significantly more to try to recover those products at the end of life. If you're designing for it up front, then of course you can start building your organization around that. And one of the things we see is the procurement shift is on materials acquisition. There's a lot of things that can go into a circular economy. Where we see companies focusing is on the procurement side and how they acquire their materials, where those materials are going to end up, substituting materials that are easier to recover or have less environmental impact, especially things like packaging. And then, of course, from an operational standpoint, when you're looking at, plant managers, supervisors, VPs of operations, the impact there is on returns and logistics. How do you set up the infrastructure for an organization that is not used to getting returns and breakdowns? There's going to be initially a lot of outsourcing of that. There's going to be entire industries built around, just like in the high-tech industry, entire industry has been built around dismantling and recovering materials in electronic equipment. And you're going to see the same thing in other industries. So where do you start as a manufacturer? Packaging and consumables. This sounds like common sense, but I see a lot of companies really focus on the product itself, which is not a bad thing. But then they'll take that product and wrap a clamshell wrap around it that is discarded and never seen again. So it's starting at that packaging point and really thinking about and working with your packaging suppliers, both the materials and the processors, and how do they build their packages in direct collaboration with you so that you're recovering that packaging material and able to reuse it. Same with consumables. If you're providing hydraulic fluid, anything like that, how do you recover those consumables? So, and as I mentioned, collaboration with suppliers in design and procurement. I think this is the piece that a lot of people miss, is that you've got to take a step back and look at who your suppliers are. And if you're really going after a circular economy, it needs to be part of the procurement process. The design engineers and procurement need to work together to figure out what's that ecosystem look like. Then the other part of the ecosystem, as we talk about it, is waste management companies. This is also another piece that gets missed sometimes, is when you start getting into packaging and recovering packaging as much as possible, working with those waste management companies. And that, that's something that that pulp and paper companies have already kind of figured out quite a while ago. But other industries that are coming into this discussion around circular economy, they have to have some sort of ecosystem around waste management. And the first thing you can do is start collecting detailed data on product use and end of life. As I mentioned before, this is where we start to talk about analytics. You start talking about bringing AI in to do pattern recognition, machine learning to learn how our products are being used. You start to get into Internet of Things, because some more complex products, you want to see actually how that product is being used when it's nearing end of life. So you start preparing for, or maybe even work to help extend that life, where a consumer or a business customer might typically throw something away. You come to them and say, hey, don't throw that away. If you just do this, this, and this, you'll get another 3 years out of it. That's a service business that you can have for yourself as well. So our recommendations as IDC, as a research company, start small in specific area of packaging. I think packaging is always the most important one where you're in a packaging company. I think you also need to start looking at how your product's used. IoT plays a role here as well. And that brings up using technology like collaborative design systems, RFID to track packaging, to track your product, blockchain to basically provide some security and traceability to your product. And you need, the most important thing though, is if you start moving in this direction of using technology to track your products and the materials around your products, you need to have some form of unified data platform. You don't want to build silos here. You want to be able to have this data transparent throughout your value chain. You need to use continuous improvement techniques to be constantly reevaluating and redesigning your inventory management, your packaging materials, product materials, and scrap. And this is where things like lean manufacturing, Six Sigma, any of these continuous improvement capabilities will really pay benefits beyond just your operational space, using it to look at and going back and look at your design process, at your suppliers. And I always say high-tech paper plastics are usually the places that start. There's a lot of opportunity there. Every industry has an opportunity, but those three in particular, because of the amount of landfill that gets consumed by those particular products, that's one of the best places to start. And of course, you need to start following the platform for accelerating the circular economy. It's an organization. It's called, everyone knows it as PACE, but it's one of the places where you can go get a lot of information just to start understanding how you can start working in the circular economy. And with that said, I will now turn it over. I'm not sure who's next. Howard?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you very much. So now we'll hear from MLC member Howard Hempelman from PTC. Howard?
Great. Thank you, David. Great. So I wanted to thank you, Kevin. That was a great segue into what I wanted to discuss today, which is what are some of the drivers and considerations for design in a circular economy. And I think that the first thing here to talk about is we are perhaps entering a phase where we should expect growth in the circular economy to begin to grow on more of an exponential pace. And I want to talk about just some of the reasons that we see as to why that is the case. Probably the biggest reason is really that consumers, a new generation of consumers, mostly in the form of millennials, are entering the marketplace with completely different expectations than what the linear economy was built on. We have established with many exceptions of companies making great progress, as Kevin mentioned, we have established a value network that has been built up over the last generation, which was really focused on the linear economy and the idea that all of the value add created through the design and manufacturing process was essentially thrown away at the end of that process when the end of life of product occurred. But the key thing today is that there's a new generation of consumers out there that really prefer access over ownership, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but I think that's going to have a profound impact on how it transforms the way companies think about design of their products and the reuse and refurbishment of the materials and the products themselves. Obviously, we do live in an environment where raw materials are finite, and back in the days of manufacturing, automation just began. That wasn't a big issue, but more and more there is pressure today on raw material scarcity, and the opportunity afforded to manufacturers in a circular economy to take more control over that supply chain is another driver. Kevin mentioned government regulations, and I agree wholeheartedly that we probably should expect more of those in the coming years, not less, and they will certainly contribute. But ultimately, it's that a combination of the first bullet in that this will become the financially sound thing for manufacturers to do. A couple of data points here: 3 billion next generation consumers, according to McKinsey, that will enter and prefer circular economy type business models. And Accenture says this is going to be a $4 trillion market. So we have the sort of perfect storm of the triple bottom line, the economical rationale for engaging in the circular economy, the social benefits, and the environmental benefits all coming together. What I wanted to start with is thinking about what are some of the considerations for design when thinking about bringing new products to market that would be tuned for the circular economy. And we could call out a few others that maybe I don't have on this slide. Materials clearly plays a big role here, both in the materials we select in new technologies like additive manufacturing, but also the environmental friendly nature of those materials, as well as continuous innovation. The idea that in a market where consumers prefer access, not ownership, how do we create a tighter relationship with those consumers so that we can put products in their hands that can continue to be enhanced and unlock more value over time. So Kevin mentioned the Internet of Things, and that's really what my first theme here is about. There are many use cases in the Internet of Things that will contribute to propelling the circular economy. Perhaps the most important is this idea that new business models product as a service, or as McKinsey calls the consumers, a consumer generation that prefers access, not ownership, is really a major unlock. Because if the consumer prefers the manufacturer to own the product over its life, that means that we've crossed the first major hurdle of the manufacturer shipping and forgetting that product. Now it's got to come back to them. And when that product comes back, it sort of takes us into topics like product lifecycle management and digital twins and the data analytics that comes along with all of that, knowing when products that are in the hands of our consumers should be serviced, what the best way to maximize the performance of those products are, how those products can work together in a system environment. All of these are critical components, and embedded in sort of this idea of a circular economy, where we're talking about a endless life cycle of the products. Product life cycle management, or 360-degree product life cycle management as enabled by connected products, becomes key. And the modularity of those products, how we design them to be better maintained, how we design them to be better serviced, and how we design them to be torn apart and rebuilt or refurbished later in their life cycle, are all critical. Of course, there's side benefits: connected field service, predictive service. All of these give us the opportunity to further reduce the energy input in the value chain. Obviously, being able to service products from 1,000 miles away is better than rolling a truck 3 times, if possible, to get it right. Virtual product experiences that can be unlocked, both in terms of how we present products to our customers using technologies like augmented and virtual reality, how that technology can be applied to the commissioning process and to enhance our customer and consumers' operations of those products. But it doesn't just stop. There's many more use cases around connected products themselves, but it doesn't stop there. We can also talk about the impact of a connected supply chain, both in making that supply chain more efficient, but also the optimization of the resources that are consumed in the supply chain. And again, the customer's ownership here has a big impact, or the OEM's ownership has a big impact once they own the product, of how they will optimize to try to reuse materials and components within that product mix. Energy consumption, massive opportunities on the production side, both within the 4 walls of the company as well as the extended supply chain. And then the idea that we can move to more of a mass customization environment that is tuned to enable design for refurbishment with modular product architectures, where the consumer feels like they have more choice, but the platforms and the structures coursing from engineering down to manufacturing are actually streamlining and making better use of common resources and materials that will come back into the resupply of the next generation of products or refurbished products. So lots of examples of where Industry 4.0 technologies fit. Kevin also mentioned additive manufacturing, and even extend that with data coming off of the connected products to inform technologies like additive with generative design. So we're really optimizing not only for reduced material consumption, but for a more lightweight design that has impacts both in how that product will contribute environmentally in its use, but in the manufacturing and design process as well. If we go and look at some examples of companies that are doing this today, and I wanted to sort of start with some really basics and build up, but Mud Jeans has a Lease Your Jeans program, and the idea here is that we, as a global economy today send every second a garbage truck of textiles either to the landfill or to a furnace. We use 2.5% of our cultivated land to produce textiles. They account for 25% of the pesticides and 10% of the world's carbon dioxide output. So here's a company that's looking at designing an apparel line, in this case jeans, that is meant to be shared. And we're seeing other, there's companies out there, Rent the Runway and others, where this model is starting to take deep roots. But with the idea that ultimately they're recycling these materials, not sending them off to the landfill. Another great example, maybe not in the equipment itself, but in impact on the industry, the Coca-Cola Freestyle machine. You know, Kevin talked about packaging. In a certain sense, the Coca-Cola Freestyle machine negates the original packaging and all of the logistics associated with shipping cans or bottles of Coca-Cola around. This is a machine that, once placed, can make 200 varieties of Coca-Cola flavored products based upon very small flavor capsules that are distributed, and then using local filtered water as the output. They have taken this further to extend the use of the product to the consumers through refillable and reusable cups for that new generation of consumers that have RFID chips. So when they walk up to the machine, it knows their preferences and streamlines that user experience. Major impact on the logistics and transportation by designing a machine that can essentially bring the factory to the consumer. And then I think another one that, you know, we're all well aware of, great example of an impact on the economy, circular economy company like Uber. You know, we have to ask the question, could they really reverse the trend of global warming? Some people suggest they can reduce dependence on fossil fuels. Passenger cars currently account for 17.6% of greenhouse gas emissions. A 90% reduction would reduce emissions by 15.9%. Autonomous cars, if we extend it to that level, which it certainly will be, could eliminate 134 billion gallons of gasoline. And the surplus in raw materials that would be available through the transformation of this industry would decrease the need for mining. So we believe that we are entering sort of a phase of accelerated growth. You know, here's one more example of a heavy industrial PTC customer in this case that is both a driver of the circular economy in that they manufacture and produce wind farms, but also a leader in how they look to implement some of these circular economy principles in optimizing their own sustainability initiatives. With that in mind, just a quick, if you're not familiar with PTC, we have the great pleasure of working with 30,000 of the finest manufacturing companies around the world, really focus on Internet of Things technology, augmented and mixed reality, digital thread, digital twin, and cloud-based design and manufacturing collaboration. With a large ecosystem of partners and global recognition from analysts of our ability to help manufacturers through this transformation. And then I'll just wrap up here with some work. We recently had the opportunity to work with the MLC team on publishing a very interesting article around how to get double-digit impact out of Industry 4.0. There's some great work we've done in the past with Professor Porter from the Harvard Business School that is directly related to how IoT plays a role in the circular economy through articles like how smart connected products are transforming competition, and other work that we've done with the Chinese and European governments. So I will pass it on to the next presenter.
And thank you very much, Howard. Yeah, thank you very much, Howard, for that. We now have the pleasure of hearing from MLC member Mike McLaughlin from Cliff Bar, who will give us a kind of a case study look on at a manufacturer right on the front lines of this. So I'm very pleased to turn it over to Mike.
Great, thank you, McLaughlin, EVP of Food Supply. I oversee the end-to-end operation, end-to-end supply chain and operation.
You're breaking up a little bit, Mike.
Here on this title slide. Okay.
Hello, Mike. Can you still?
How about?
Mike,
can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, you're kind of fading in and out. Are you on a headset? Can you go to a handset? If so.
Yes, yeah, I'll try. Just a second. Is this any better?
I think so. Keep going.
Okay, we'll give this a go.
Okay, great, thank you.
So this quote here, "Learn to climb a different way," is from Cliff Bar's founder, Gary Erickson, and it kind of forms the foundation of what we'll talk today, Cliff Bar. And we'll a few brief things in these comments. First is some background on Cliff Bar. I'll walk you through our broader sustainability journey and how it's led us to some circular economy initiatives, and then more importantly, how it links back to our values. And then I'll end by summarizing with some key learning that I hope will help with your journey. So just a little bit about Cliff Bar. We've been producing natural and organic energy for 1992. Cliff Bar, the #1 nutrition bar in the category in the US and Canada. And we also market top nutrition bar brands like Z-Bar, Nutrition for Kids, Builders, and Luna, which was the first nutrition bar for women. We're a family and employee-owned company, and we're based in Emeryville, California, with production throughout North America. Now, you can scan through the milestones of our history here. I won't go through all of this, but the foundation of the sustainability programs that exist today were formed in 2000, 8 years after the starting of the company, when Gary found himself in a predicament. So 3 brands, including us, made up almost all of the category, which was growing like crazy. The other 2, Power Bar and Balance Bar, were acquired by major multinational food companies. And not knowing how we would be able to compete with the likes of Nestle and Kraft, Gary started to entertain offers of his own and was in the final stages of selling the company when he started to question the motives and the wisdom of selling out. And he realized that he was about to have more money than he had ever dreamed of, but he also felt that he wasn't done yet. And he wanted to continue his vision for the brand and for the company that he named after his father. So he didn't sell. He had to buy out his partner, who was ready to check out, and was taking on significant debt in the process. So he decided that if he was going to give up all of this money for his values and his vision, then he needed to articulate the values and vision in a way that everybody in the company could understand. And that's when what we call the 5 aspirations were born. So Cliff Bar is run on 5 bottom lines, or what we call 5 aspirations. They're about sustaining our business, sustaining our brands, sustaining our people, sustaining our community, and sustaining our planet. We govern the company on these aspirations. We set goals around all 5 aspirations, and we award bonuses based on the performance against all 5 aspirations. So today we'll talk about just one of these aspirations, the planet aspiration. And we'll start with our vision for the supply chain, the area of the company that's going to make or break our performance against the planet aspiration. And so the vision is for our food to be made with organic, sustainable ingredients, baked in facilities that run on renewable energy and recycle all waste, packaged in eco-friendly packaging in a way that doesn't pollute. And the first of the programs around around these broader aspirations is food and agriculture. So our commitment to support and grow organic agriculture has been the foundation of all of the environmental sustainability efforts that we've had for the last 15 years. Currently, 80% of the ingredients we source are organic and certified sustainable. And many know that Clif Bar is the largest private funder of organic U.S. And we believe so strongly in organic in this economy because it fosters a more healthy soils that are able to store more carbon and water to withstand drought. It uses up to 50% less fossil fuels than conventional, and it enables reduced risk of toxic and synthetic pesticides and fertilizers to farmers and consumers. Another major pillar of all of energy and climate action, and we source 100% green power for all electricity used at Clif-owned and operated facilities. This includes our Emeryville via on-site solar plus renewable energy credits, or RECs, and in Indiana, which are solar and RECs. And back in 2003, Clif Bar committed to taking responsibility for its contribution to climate change by assessing our carbon footprint and investing in enough green power and carbon offsets to run carbon neutral business operations from forward. And to help the climate movement beyond our four walls, we launched the 50/50 by 2 program in 2014. And I'm glad to say that this year we'll meet our goal of having 50 supply chain facilities source 50% of the electricity used to make Clif Bar products and services through green power. On to waste and diversion, we use traditional as well as manufacturing 4.0 improvement techniques to ensure that facilities divert well over 90% of the waste for incineration. And this is paving or waste certification that we hope to complete this year. 100% of our paper packaging comes from recycled paper, and we're in the process of reducing our percent. I'll talk more about that in a second. And we also encourage our employees to take steps in their personal lives to combat climate, providing incentives to employees around carpooling, home solar, energy efficient appliances, and hybrid and electric cars. And we even reimburse each employee national park membership each year to encourage playing in the places that we work very hard to protect. Our facilities, including state-of-the-art bakeries, solar arrays, bioinfrastructure, reclaimed materials within these buildings, and biophilic designs of bringing the outdoors in to increase productivity of employees. Now, what's new in 2020 for us is we start to take bigger steps towards the circular economy. I'll start in the middle of this slide. We made some big commitments around primary packaging. That's the wrapper, which is mainly comprised of plastic, and it's primarily used to maintain shelf life. Signed on to the Ellen MacArthur Awards, what they call a new plastics economy. And central to this is that the vision is supported by 3 key actions: eliminate, innovate, and circulate the plastics that we don't need, innovate to ensure that the plastics we do need are reusable, recyclable, compostable, and circulate all that we use to keep them in the economy. And our first steps towards this commitment are steeped in total product lifecycle design of the whole offering, product and package, and we're already piloting the near future just to get moving and just to get learning. And if you're unfamiliar, I encourage you to look at Ellen MacArthur work. There's a lot there around what's happening around climate initiatives, plastic initiatives, and the circular economy. Looking to the left of this slide, we're also committed to preventing and removing 1 million pounds of waste from the environment. That's just doing our part by inspiring employees and like-minded companies to come together and raise awareness around plastic in the environment and get moving in initiatives to remove this plastic from the environment. And on the right side of this slide, just building on the paper initiatives that we have already is understanding that forests help clean our air, provide habitat for wildlife, support a healthy climate, and much more. So, and today with wildfires, drought, and other climate change-related impacts, it puts them at risk. And that's why we've set a goal to plant 1 million trees by 2025 and are partnering with American Forests, one of the oldest national forest conservation organizations in North America, in order to do this. So you see these initiatives around sustaining our planet, sustaining our people and communities, they're all part of what goes into a Cliff Bar. And just to close off, we've been reducing waste and reusing what we do waste to the extent that we can as part of the mission of the company. We've done a lot, but we don't have it all right, and we still have a lot more to do and a lot more to learn. So my advice to firms looking in this direction are, number one, be authentic. Greenwashing is harder to do in a circular economy versus broader sustainability initiatives, but it's still common among employees, and I basically mean driving somewhat superficial initiatives because of consumer or government pressure. And I think we all know that employees can sniff out inauthenticity a mile away, and so can consumers. So start from an authentic place that resonates with your organization's values and culture. And then from this authentic place, set a values-based vision and operationalize it. The 5 aspirations works for us, but find something that works for you. And then finally, partner and learn from like-minded organizations from the public and private sector, because you obviously can't do it alone, and these types of collaborations will jumpstart your progress. And with that, I'll hand it back over to David.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's a great story at Cliff Bar, really inspirational. Thank you for that. So now let me turn to our colleague at the NAM, Laura Berkey-Ames, who's going to give us a talk around some of the things she's working on at the governmental and regulatory level. Laura?
Great. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, wonderful. Well, I'm going to give you a broad overview of the NAM's position on sustainability, as well as providing you all with updates on what the NAM has been focused on. Oops. Oh, wait a minute. David, do you, I think I'm experiencing a technical difficulty here.
Yeah, let me see if I can move those slides for you, Laura.
Yeah, thank you.
Leslie, could you step in, please, and just take
I don't have controls either.
Thank you. And if you could run through until we get back to Laura's slides, that'd be good. Yeah, Laura, just use the arrows.
Yep, I was. I don't know what happened. Sorry about that.
No problem. If it happens again, we'll do it for you. Okay, go ahead.
There we go. Wonderful. Alrighty. Go.
Oh, don't. That's it. Just click on the screen once and then use the arrows.
There we go. All right, wonderful. Well, I'll start off by saying that today's manufacturers are boldly leading the charge to protect the environment while simultaneously changing the face of modern manufacturing. Manufacturers are prioritizing sustainability by increasing energy efficiency, saving and recycling water, and implementing successful initiatives to reduce pollution and waste. We do recognize at the NAM that implementing sustainable practices are industry specific, but they also can be very company specific, as you all heard from previous presenters today on the phone. So we want to make sure that, the term sustainability, there is no one-size-fits-all definition. We want to respect the fact that each company, each industry is unique and are going to find the appropriate ways to implement sustainable practices as they see fit. Just to give you all a little bit of background as to who the NAM is, we are the voice of more than 12.8 million men and women who make things in America. We are the largest manufacturing trade association in the United States, and I'm very pleased to tell you all that this year we are celebrating our 125th anniversary. We represent 14,000 member companies across every industrial sector, both large, medium, and small manufacturers, and across all 50 states. As you will see from the stats provided below, 79% of NAM members are Fortune 100 manufacturers, 54% of NAM members are Fortune 500 manufacturers, and 90% of NAM members are small and medium-sized manufacturers. Now, to set the stage a little bit on our position on environmental quality and sustainability, and please bear in mind this is a high-level overview, I will start by saying that the NAM is committed to protecting the environment and environmental sustainability, and we fully support the ongoing national effort to protect our environment and improve public health through appropriate laws and regulations. We've also believe that American industry has established a strong record in environmental protection, and as the foundation of communities, manufacturers have made substantial investments over time to minimize their environmental footprint. It is in that vein that the NAM supports sustainability efforts that encourage research, development, and innovation. We truly feel that our member companies are individually taking the time to conduct research and development, research and innovation. They are certainly embracing innovation and implementing new sustainable practices. We also support efforts that protect the environment, natural resources, and biodiversity, improving the environmental health and safety profile of manufacturing and its workforce, strengthening resource management and the application of life cycle analysis practices, and last but not least, use recycled materials in the manufacture of products and packaging. So I want to get into a little bit as to why are manufacturers embracing sustainable manufacturing practices and what challenges they face. So ignoring the fact that we are currently in the midst of a pandemic, some of the challenges that manufacturers have faced, it's really an ever-present challenge, is finding and retaining skilled workers. There's also our members have been challenged by international trade uncertainties. However, despite all that, in recent years, manufacturers have experienced a strong economic optimism, which resulted in hiring more workers, raising employee compensation, investing in new plants and equipment, and delivering responsible environmental stewardship. So now I also want to get into the fact that the NAM conducted a sustainability in manufacturing survey. The NAM surveyed its member companies to gain a better understanding of what they are doing to implement sustainable and energy efficient practices, and the results were extremely positive. So I'm going to go over a few highlights with you. We found that 71.9% of manufacturers actually have a sustainability policy in place, and another 8.3% are currently developing one. That means that about 80% of NAM member companies are dedicated to implementing sustainable practices. We also found that 62% of companies have sustainable policies because it's their preferred business model. Interestingly enough, the next most common reason was consumer demand, and that was cited by 50% of manufacturers. We also found that more than 75% of NAM member companies use a life cycle approach toward the sustainability of some or all of their products. And the NAM recently updated its recycling policy position, built it out further. We also included some new positions and developed some new positions on circular economy as well as sustainable packaging. Some additional highlights for you from the survey. It revealed that 93.8% of companies are tracking their energy usage. 76.3% of companies have a program on recycling. And lastly, 81.3% of manufacturers are also tracking their water usage. So some of the major takeaways from this survey and some of are as follows. One, it revealed that as leaders of American industry, NAM members are committed to reducing their environmental footprint, that sustainability has truly become mainstream across all industrial sectors. And lastly, through continued investment in innovation, manufacturers are working to minimize natural resource impacts by increasing efficiencies and conservation to optimize raw material input and reduce waste output. So now I want to transition to how the National Association of Manufacturers is working to amplify NAM members' sustainable practices, and as well as providing them with excellent member value and access to the key policymakers and decision makers inside the Beltway. So on April 10th, 2018, the NAM and the Department of Energy launched a Sustainability in Manufacturing Partnership. This partnership was endorsed by former Secretary of Energy Rick Perry and NAM President and CEO Jay Timmons. Some of the partnership objectives are as follows. We want to one, provide a platform to amplify manufacturers' environmental stewardship, encourage our members to voluntarily adopt energy efficient and sustainable practices. We wanted to make sure our members have direct access to DOE's Advanced Manufacturing Office, as well as raising awareness of the resources offered through DOE's Better Plants program. So this partnership is specifically through DOE's Better Plants program. We discovered that between about 200 NAM member companies are already participating with DOE's Better Plants, Better Buildings program. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the Better Plants, Better Buildings program, this is a voluntary program where manufacturers can work with DOE to set, meet, and quite possibly exceed their energy efficiency and other sustainable goals that they help set, that DOE helps them set. Again, it's a voluntary program. It's been wonderful for our members. And we really view this partnership as a long-term partnership that will transcend both the Trump administration as well as sessions of Congress. We are making sure our members are staying connected to not only the political appointees in the administration, but also connecting with the career staff. We also formed another partnership, and that is with the Environmental Protection Agency. That partnership formed 6 months later. Oh, I'm having some, let me see, technical difficulties.
Yeah, just a little time check here. We're getting close to the hour, folks. We'll leave this open for a couple minutes after 12 just to complete this and take your questions. So, Laura, were you able to solve the problem here?
Let's see. Here we go. Sorry about that.
Oh, here we go.
I'll breeze through the next few slides. We established our partnership with EPA on October 19th. That was also endorsed by the EPA administrator as well as our president and CEO. The partnership objectives for this sustainability and manufacturing partnership is fostering greater collaboration and communication across industrial sectors, creating unique opportunities for NAM members to showcase how their sustainable practices are improving the manufacturing process, direct access to EPA's Smart Sectors program, and lastly, raising awareness of the resources offered through EPA's Smart Sectors program. Again, we view this partnership as long-term that will transcend presidential administrations and sessions of Congress. As far as our DOE and EPA partnerships go, we are engaging in the following activities. We're encouraging our members to tell their sustainability story, not only to the agencies that we have partnerships with, but we are also amplifying our members' stories through NAM's channels on our website and via social media. That includes LinkedIn, Facebook, as well as Twitter. Meetings with key administration personnel. We are participating with DOE's Better Plants, Better Buildings Summit that occurs every year in the summer, as well as EPA's America's Recycling Summit that occurred last November, and the NAM also signed on to EPA's America's Recycled Pledge. We're engaging with NAM's state partners And we're also making sure that we are conducting ample outreach to NAM small and medium-sized manufacturers, as well as our energy-intense industrial sectors. As I said, our small and medium-sized manufacturers account for 90% of NAM member companies, so we want to make sure they're engaged. We're also collaborating with the Department of Agriculture. We are growing our relationship with USDA by fostering greater collaboration and communication with this agency and with our members who have a vested interest in sustainable agriculture, farming, and forestry. We're raising awareness of USDA's tools and resources. We amplified last July, USDA's Food Loss and Waste 2030 Champions Initiative. In particular, we hosted Deputy Secretary of Agriculture Stephen Sensky at our office. And most recently, we are working with USDA on their innovation initiative. We are continuing to engage with them since the Secretary announced their innovation initiative on February 20th of this year. And lastly, I'll just wrap things up by saying that manufacturers in America are clearly dedicated to creating products that make modern life possible while simultaneously protecting the environment. We are, manufacturers in America recognize that to compete in the global marketplace and grow their businesses, implementing sustainable practices is a key to their success. And lastly, manufacturers in America want to shine a spotlight on their sustainability success stories to strengthen relationships with lawmakers, administration personnel, their customers, and the communities in which they live and serve. Again, the NAM is working to amplify our members' voice, not only to the public and the press, but to administration personnel and to the Hill. This issue crosses party lines. Our members are incredibly dedicated to implementing sustainable practices, and clearly this issue is only going to continue to gain momentum in the years and months to come, and the NAM is exceedingly excited to be a part of embracing all things sustainability in manufacturing. And with that, thank you so much for the opportunity, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Laura. I want to respect everybody's time. I know we're at the witching hour, but we'll hold it open for another minute or so if there are any pressing questions. So the floor is open, council members. Any pressing questions, please state them. Anything at all from council members? You're all unmuted now. Any key questions from anyone? Not hearing any. I know you're all pressed for time. If you do think of a question after this, please contact me or a member of the MLC team. We'll be happy to get an answer to you from our panelists. With that, I'd like to thank our panelists once again, Kevin Prouty, Howard Hempelman, Mike McLaughlin, and Laura Berkey-Ames for their participation today. This is great information. It'll be archived on the MLC site shortly. So once again, thank you for joining us today. I'm David Brossell, and we'll look forward to seeing you on a future Critical Issues call. Thank you and goodbye.